A devoted young man spent his last $48 to celebrate his mother's birthday. He ordered a steak for her, while quietly eating only soup himself, lying that he had already eaten earlier. What he didn't know was that a wealthy woman sitting alone nearby was watching every moment. Moved by his sacrifice and love for his mother, she quietly paid for their meal. But a short while later, a loud scream suddenly rang out in the parking lot. When the young man and his mother hurried outside, they witnessed a shocking scene. Before we dive into the full story, tell me where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories of kindness every day. The rain came down in sheets across Chicago's South Side, turning the cracked pavement into a mirror of yellow streetlights. Ethan Miller pulled his thin jacket tighter, feeling the cold seep through the worn fabric. The wind cut across his face, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust from passing cars. He kept his hand wrapped around the wallet in his pocket, feeling the edges of the bills inside. $48. That was all that stood between him and empty. He'd counted it 3 times already that afternoon. Once at the end of his shift, once on the bus ride home, and once more in the narrow hallway of their apartment building, while his mother was in the bathroom. $48 to cover rent that was due in 5 days. $48 to refill the prescription that kept his mother's joints from swelling so badly she couldn't walk. $48 to keep the lights on for another week. The math didn't work, it never did anymore. Ethan was 24, but some mornings he felt twice that age. He'd been working gig jobs since he was 15, ever since the night a drunk driver ran a red light and turned his father into a memory. Delivery driver, warehouse loader, grocery bagger, dog walker, whatever paid. Lately even those jobs were drying up. The delivery app had cut his hours, tips were smaller, people were holding on to their money tighter, and he couldn't blame them. Ethan, honey, we don't have to do this. His mother's voice pulled him back to the present. Linda Miller stood beside him under the awning of a closed bookstore, her gray hair plastered to her forehead despite the hood of her coat. She was 52, but arthritis had aged her body faster than her years. Even now, Ethan could see the way she shifted her weight off her left knee, the way her fingers curled slightly inward from the constant ache in her joints. Mom, it's your birthday, Ethan said, forcing a smile. We're going to dinner, that's final. I can make something at home, we have rice. We have, Mom, he put his hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. It's your birthday, you're going to have a real meal. A good one. Linda's eyes searched his face, and Ethan knew she was looking for the lie. She'd gotten good at that over the years, reading the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes when he said he'd eaten lunch at work, when really he'd pocketed the $5 to put toward her medicine instead. Did you get more tips today? She asked quietly. Yeah, Ethan said, the word coming out smooth and easy because he'd practiced it. Good day, real good day. So stop worrying. It wasn't true. He'd made $32 in 8 hours of deliveries, and most of that had gone to gas. But his mother didn't need to know that. Not tonight. Not on her 52nd birthday, which she would have spent alone in their dim apartment if he had anything to say about it. They walked 3 blocks through the rain to Harbor Street Diner. Ethan had chosen it carefully. Not so cheap that it would depress her, not so expensive that the prices would make her refuse to order. He held the door open, and a wave of warm air rolled over them, carrying the smell of coffee and grilled onions. The diner was nearly empty. A couple sat in one corner, heads bent over their phones. A man in a work uniform ate alone at the counter. Near the window, an older woman sat by herself, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. Ethan didn't pay her much attention. He was too busy calculating. A server with tired eyes and a kind smile led them to a booth. The vinyl seats were patched with duct tape in places, and the table wobbled slightly when Ethan leaned his elbows on it. Linda slid in across from him, and he could see the relief in her face just from being off her feet. Can I get you folks something to drink? The server asked. Just water for both of us. Ethan said quickly, before his mother could order anything else. When the server left, Linda picked up the menu. Ethan watched her eyes move down the laminated pages, watched her fingers trace over the prices. He knew what she was doing. She was looking for the cheapest item, something that wouldn't make her feel guilty. The soup looks good, she said. Mom, get whatever you want. I like soup, Mom, She looked up at him, and there was something fragile in her expression, something that made Ethan's chest tighten. I don't want you spending money we don't have. We have it, Ethan lied. I told you. Good tips today. The server returned with their waters. Ethan picked up his menu, running his finger down the entrees, doing the math in his head. If his mother ordered the cheapest steak, that would be $18. With tax and a tip he couldn't afford not to leave, they'd be looking at close to $30 total. That would leave him with $18 for the next 5 days, unless he didn't eat. I'll have the steak, Linda said, her voice small. The smallest one. And can I get vegetables instead of fries? Of course, honey, the server said, writing it down. She turned to Ethan. And for you, just the soup, Ethan said. And keep the water coming. Ethan, that's not enough. I ate at work, Mom. I'm not that hungry. He handed his menu back to the server before his mother could argue. Really, I had a big lunch. Another lie. He'd had half a granola bar at 10 in the morning and nothing since. When the server left, Linda reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were cold and slightly swollen. You're a good son. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. You're a good mom. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the soft jazz playing from a speaker somewhere overhead. The rain continued to hammer against the window, turning the street outside into a blur of headlights and shadows. 52, Linda said suddenly. I can't believe I'm 52. You don't look a day over 40, Ethan said. She laughed, a real laugh that made the tightness in Ethan's chest ease just a little. You're a terrible liar. I'm serious, you get that from your father. He could never lie either. Her smile faded slightly. He would have been so proud of you. Ethan looked down at the table. He didn't trust himself to speak. I wish things were easier for you, Linda continued. You shouldn't have to, Mom. Stop. Tonight's about you, remember? It's your birthday. No sad talk. She nodded, but Ethan could see the guilt in her eyes. The same guilt he saw every time she took her medication, every time she couldn't help with rent, every time he came home exhausted from working double shifts. She carried it like a weight, and no matter what Ethan said, he couldn't lift it from her shoulders. The food arrived 15 minutes later. The steak was small but cooked perfectly, the vegetables bright and steaming. Ethan's soup came in a white bowl, thin and watery, with a few sad vegetables floating on top. He stirred it slowly, trying to make it last. Linda cut a piece of steak and held it out across the table. Here, take some. Mom, I'm fine. Ethan, I'm full. Really. She gave him a look that said she knew he was lying, but she didn't push it. Instead she ate slowly, savoring each bite in a way that made Ethan glad he'd spent the money. When was the last time she'd had a meal she didn't have to cook herself? When was the last time someone had done something nice for her without her having to ask? As they ate, Ethan noticed the older woman by the window watching them. Not in a rude way, but with a kind of distant attention, like she was observing something that interested her. He ignored it. People stared sometimes. Maybe they looked like an odd pair, mother and son having dinner on a rainy Tuesday night in a half-empty diner. Make a wish, Ethan said when his mother finished eating. What? It's your birthday. Make a wish, Linda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wish things get better for you. That's all I ever wish for. That's not how wishes work. You have to wish for yourself. You are for myself. Ethan felt something crack in his chest, a hairline fracture in the wall he'd built to keep himself standing upright. He looked away, blinking hard. When the check came, he pulled out his wallet under the table, shielding it from his mother's view. The total was $27.36. He pulled out 2 20s, leaving them on the small tray. That left him with $8 and some change. Enough for 1 gallon of gas, maybe a loaf of bread. Ready to go? He asked. Standing before his mother could see his hands shake. They were almost to the door when the server caught up with them. Wait, she said, slightly out of breath. I need you to come back to the table. Ethan's stomach dropped. Had his card been declined? But he'd paid cash. Had he not left enough? He turned around, his mother close behind him, and walked back to the booth. On the table sat a small cake, no bigger than a dinner plate. A single candle burned in the center, its flame flickering in the draft from the heating vent. Written in blue icing were the words, "Happy Birthday." Linda stopped walking. Her hand went to her mouth. I don't understand, Ethan said, looking at the server. We didn't order this. The server smiled. Someone else did. They also paid for your meal. Everything's taken care of. Who? Ethan spun around, scanning the diner. The couple in the corner was gone. The man at the counter was gone. The older woman by the window, she was gone too. She left a few minutes ago, the server said, holding out a small piece of paper. But she asked me to give you this. Ethan took the note. The handwriting was elegant, slanted slightly to the right. There are great men who start with devotion to their mothers. He read it 3 times before his mother gently took it from his hands. She read it once, and then tears started rolling down her cheeks. I don't understand, Linda whispered. Who was that? I don't know, Ethan said, but his voice felt far away. He stared at the cake, at the single candle burning down slowly. Someone had been watching them. Someone had seen his mother order the cheapest steak, had seen him order soup and water, had seen something that made them want to help. And they hadn't waited around for thanks. Make your real wish, Ethan said softly. Linda leaned forward and blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into the warm air of the diner. Ethan didn't ask what she wished for. He thought maybe, for the first time in a long time, she might have wished for something for herself. They left the diner 10 minutes later, the cake in a takeout box tucked under Ethan's arm. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the streets gleamed like polished stone. As they walked toward the bus stop, Ethan kept turning the note over in his pocket, running his thumb across the smooth paper. Someone had seen them. Really seen them, not as problems or statistics or people to pity, but as human beings worth celebrating. He didn't know who she was, but he knew he'd remember this night for the rest of his life. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. Linda fell asleep against Ethan's shoulder, her breathing slow and even, and he sat very still so he wouldn't wake her. Through the rain-streaked window, Chicago slid past in fragments, storefronts with metal grates pulled down for the night. Groups of people huddled under bus shelters, a man pushing a shopping cart piled high with plastic bags. Ethan thought about the woman. In his mind he tried to reconstruct her face, but the details were fuzzy. Gray hair, he thought. A good coat, wool maybe. She'd been sitting alone just like them. Just another person having dinner on a Tuesday night. Except she wasn't. She was someone who carried enough cash to pay for strangers' meals and buy birthday cakes on impulse. She was someone who could afford to be generous. The thought sat uncomfortable in Ethan's chest. He didn't like feeling like charity. He'd worked for everything he had, every meal, every bus fare, every dollar that went toward keeping the roof over their heads. Pride was sometimes the only thing he had left. But when he looked down at his mother's sleeping face, worn and peaceful, he couldn't find it in himself to be angry. Their apartment was on the 4th floor of a building with an elevator that worked half the time. Tonight was a half-time night. Ethan helped his mother up the stairs, letting her lean on him when her knees started to buckle on the 3rd-floor landing. By the time they reached their door, she was breathing hard. You okay? He asked. Fine, she said, but he could hear the pain underneath the word. Inside the apartment was cold. Ethan had turned the heat down before they left to save money. He flicked on the lights. The bulb in the living room was out, so only the kitchen fluorescent buzzed to life, and helped his mother to the couch. I'll make you some tea, he said. You don't have to, Mom. Sit. While the water heated, Ethan stood at the kitchen counter and stared at the cake box. He opened it carefully. The cake was chocolate with vanilla icing, simple but perfect. The candle had left a small crater in the center where it had burned down. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A notification from the delivery app. You have been assigned to a delivery route, starting at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Except, 6 a.m. meant waking up at 4:30, it meant 12 hours on his feet, driving through traffic, hauling packages up apartment stairs. It meant coming home too exhausted to think straight. He accepted it. The kettle whistled. Ethan poured hot water over a tea bag in his mother's favorite mug, the one with the faded flowers on the side. He brought it to her along with 2 of her pain pills. You take such good care of me, Linda said, wrapping her hands around the mug. You took care of me first, Ethan replied. He sat down beside her on the couch. The springs creaked under their combined weight. For a while they didn't talk. The radiator clanked and hissed, fighting against the cold. Outside sirens wailed in the distance, a sound so common Ethan barely heard it anymore. That woman, Linda said finally. Why do you think she did that? I don't know. Do you think she'll come back? Ethan considered this. Probably not. I think people like that. They do something nice and move on. They don't stick around for thank yous. I wish I could have thanked her. Maybe that's why she left. Linda took a sip of tea, wincing slightly as she adjusted her position. I keep thinking about what the note said. About great men. Mom, you are, great. Maybe not the way the world measures it, but you're the best person I know. Ethan looked at his hands. They were rough from work, caul used across the palms, a burn scar on his right thumb from a hot delivery bag. I'm just doing what I have to do. No, Linda said firmly. Lots of people do what they have to do. Not all of them do it with kindness. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They sat together until Linda's tea was finished, and then he helped her to bed. He made sure she had water on the nightstand, made sure her phone was charging, made sure the extra blanket was folded at the foot of her bed in case she got cold. Good night, Mom, he said from the doorway. Good night, sweetheart. And Ethan, she propped herself up on one elbow. Thank you, for tonight, for everything. He nodded, not trusting his voice, and pulled the door mostly closed. In his own room, Ethan lay on top of the covers, still dressed. He was too tired to change, too tired to brush his teeth, too tired to do anything but stare at the ceiling and listen to the building settle around him. Someone's TV played through the wall, a baby cried on the floor above. The refrigerator hummed its broken song. 4:30 would come fast. But before he let himself sleep, Ethan pulled out his wallet and counted what was left. $8.63, not enough for the week ahead. Not enough for anything really. But tonight his mother had blown out a candle. Tonight someone had seen them and decided they mattered. That had to count for something. 3 blocks away, Evelyn Carter sat in the back of a black car, watching rain trace patterns down the tinted window. Her driver, Marcus, knew better than to make conversation when she was in this mood. He'd worked for her long enough to read the signs, the way she held herself very still, the way her fingers worried at the clasp of her handbag. Home, Mrs. Carter? He asked. Yes, she said. Then after a pause, no, drive around for a bit. Marcus nodded and pulled smoothly into traffic. Evelyn opened her handbag and pulled out her phone. No messages, no missed calls. She'd known there wouldn't be, but she checked anyway. It was a habit she couldn't break, this small hope that flickered and died every time she looked at the empty screen. Today was her birthday too. 68 years old. She'd spent it alone in her penthouse office, signing papers and taking calls from people who wanted her money, her influence, her name on their boards. At 7 p.m., she'd told her assistant to go home and decided on impulse to find somewhere quiet to eat. Somewhere no one would recognize her. Harbor Street Diner had seemed perfect. No one looked twice at an older woman in a good coat. No one knew that the simple wool she wore cost more than most people made in a month. No one cared. She'd ordered tea and sat by the window, trying to remember the last time she'd eaten alone in public. Years maybe. Decades. When you reached a certain level of wealth, privacy became a commodity too valuable to waste, and then they'd walked in. The young man and his mother. Evelyn had noticed them immediately, though she couldn't say why. Maybe it was the careful way he held the door. Maybe it was the worn-through patch on the shoulder of his jacket. Maybe it was the look in his eyes when he glanced at the menu, sharp, calculating, afraid. She'd watched them order, watched the mother try to choose the cheapest option, watched the son pretend he wasn't hungry, watched the lie pass between them as smooth as breath, and something in Evelyn's chest had cracked open. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror 50 years ago. Before the money, before Carter Holdings, before she became the kind of woman who could buy and sell companies with a phone call. Back when she was a girl whose mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. That boy wasn't eating so his mother could have steak. Evelyn had called the server over with a gesture. The couple in the booth, she'd said quietly. I'd like to pay for their meal, and I'd like you to bring them a birthday cake. Something small, just 1 candle. The server had smiled. That's really kind of you. Don't tell them who it's from, just say someone took care of it. She'd written the note on a business card, crossing out her printed information and scribbling the message on the blank side. She'd left before they saw the cake, slipping out while the server was in the kitchen. She didn't need thanks, didn't want them. What she wanted she couldn't name. Now, sitting in the car as Marcus drove through rain-slicked streets, Evelyn felt something unfamiliar, not quite satisfaction. Not quite peace, just a small warmth in her chest, like a candle lit in a dark room. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus said, "I'm going to pull over near that parking garage entrance. I need to make a quick call about tomorrow's schedule. Will you be all right for a moment?" Of course. Marcus pulled the car to the curb near the entrance to a half-covered parking structure. "I'll just be a minute. You can wait in the car if you'd like, or there's an overhang there if you want some air." Evelyn looked at the garage entrance. After the stuffiness of the diner and the car, fresh air sounded appealing. "I'll step out, take your time." She got out of the car, pulling her coat tight against the drizzle. Marcus moved to the front of the vehicle, phone already to his ear, speaking in low tones about routes and schedules. Evelyn walked a few steps toward the garage overhang, seeking shelter from the rain. The garage was dimly lit, shadows pooling between the concrete pillars. She stood just inside the entrance, close enough to see Marcus but sheltered from the weather. She pulled out her phone again, more from habit than hope. Still nothing. She thought about the note she'd written. There are great men who start with devotion to their mothers. Had it been presumptuous? Who was she to tell that young man he was great? She didn't know him, didn't know his struggles beyond what she'd observed, but she'd meant it. Every word. Footsteps echoed behind her. Multiple sets. Evelyn turned. 3 young men emerged from deeper in the garage, spreading out in a loose semicircle. Even in the dim light, she could see the aggressive posture, the way they shifted their weight like predators deciding whether to pounce. Her instincts, honed from growing up in rough neighborhoods, screamed danger. "Nice coat," one of them said. His breath smelled like alcohol and something sweet. He couldn't have been more than 20, but his eyes were hard. Evelyn's hand tightened on her handbag. She glanced toward the street. Marcus was still on the phone, his back turned, completely unaware. "My driver is right there. He'll be back any second." "Then we better be quick." The young man stepped closer. "Give us the bag." "No." Evelyn's voice was steadier than she felt. She'd faced down hostile shareholders and corporate raiders, but this was different. This was physical danger, immediate and raw. He laughed. "Wrong answer, lady." One of them grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Evelyn tried to pull away, but another one yanked at her handbag. The leather strap cut into her shoulder as she held on instinctively. "Let go," the first man yelled, his grip tightening painfully. Evelyn opened her mouth to scream for Marcus, but a hand clamped over her mouth. They were dragging her deeper into the garage, away from the street, away from help. Then someone pulled something from their jacket. A knife. Small but sharp, the blade catching the overhead lights. "Last chance," he said, bringing the knife closer to her face. "Give it up or we'll take it and anything else we want." Terror shot through her. This wasn't just a mugging anymore. "Hey!" A voice cut through the garage like a whip. "Get away from her." The 3 men turned. Ethan and Linda had just emerged from the stairwell on the other side of the garage. They'd been cutting through on their way to the bus stop. The shortcut saved 10 minutes and Linda's knee was bothering her when they saw the struggle. Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran straight toward them, his mother close behind. "Stay back," the one with the knife warned, waving it in the air. But Ethan didn't stop. He grabbed the man's shoulder and yanked him away from Evelyn. The man stumbled, surprised by the interference. The hand over Evelyn's mouth released as they all turned to face this new threat. "This isn't your business." The one with the knife shouted. "I'm making it my business," Ethan said, positioning himself between Evelyn and her attackers. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might explode, but he held his ground. Behind him he could feel Evelyn's ragged breathing, could sense her fear. Then Linda was there beside him, her phone held high. "I'm calling 911. I've got your faces. The police are coming." She pressed the emergency call button, and her voice rang out clear and loud. "Yes, we're at the parking garage on Harbor Street. 3 men are attacking a woman. They have a knife. We need police now." "She's really calling," one of them said, panicked. From the street, Marcus finally looked up. He saw the scene, his employer surrounded by strangers, 2 people he didn't know intervening. 3 men with weapons. He started running toward them shouting. The one with the knife swore viciously. For a second Ethan thought he might lunge anyway, might bury that blade in his chest just for the satisfaction of it. Their eyes met, and Ethan saw the calculation happening. 3 of them, but witnesses now. People calling police, a large man running toward them. "Let's go," the leader hissed. They turned and ran, their footsteps echoing off the concrete as they disappeared into the shadows at the far end of the garage and out a side exit. Ethan stood there shaking, his hands still raised defensively. Evelyn leaned against the concrete pillar behind her, breathing hard, her expensive coat torn at the shoulder where they'd grabbed her. Her arm bore red marks where fingers had dug in. Marcus reached them, out of breath. "Mrs. Carter, are you hurt?" Evelyn couldn't get the words out. She was trembling violently now that the immediate danger had passed. Ethan turned to look at her properly for the first time. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. "You," he said quietly. "You're the woman from the diner." Evelyn stared at him, her gray eyes wide with shock. Then at Linda, who still had her phone pressed to her ear, giving the 911 operator their exact location. "You came back," Evelyn whispered. "You ran toward danger. For me. Are you hurt?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. He could see the finger marks on her arm, the torn coat, the terror still written across her face. I think Evelyn's legs buckled. Ethan caught her before she fell, supporting her weight. Linda finished with the dispatcher and immediately moved to Evelyn's other side. "It's okay," Linda murmured, using the same soothing tone she'd used when Ethan was a child waking from nightmares. "You're safe now. We've got you." Evelyn let out a breath that might have been a sob. Marcus hovered anxiously, guilt written all over his face. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Carter. I was on the phone, I didn't see." "It's not your fault, Marcus," Evelyn managed. Her voice was shaky but growing steadier. "I chose to get out of the car. You couldn't have known." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "Can you stand?" Ethan asked gently. "I think so." But when he started to release her, her knees wobbled again. The shock was setting in properly now. "Let's sit you down," Linda said, guiding her to a low concrete barrier near the garage entrance. Evelyn sat heavily, and Linda sat beside her, keeping one arm around her shoulders. Marcus paced nearby, on his phone now, probably calling security or lawyers or whoever billionaires called when they were attacked. Ethan crouched in front of Evelyn. "They didn't hurt you. The knife didn't." "No, you got here before." She couldn't finish the sentence. Before what might have happened. Before the knife had done more than threaten. Before they dragged her somewhere darker and more isolated. "You saved me," Evelyn said, looking between Ethan and Linda. "Both of you. You didn't even know who I was, and we knew you were in trouble," Linda said simply. "That's all that mattered." 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. Officers got out, and the next 20 minutes dissolved into statements and questions and descriptions of the attackers. An ambulance arrived despite Evelyn's protests that she was fine. "Ma'am, you need to be checked out," one of the EMTs insisted. "You're showing signs of shock." Evelyn allowed them to examine her, to check her vitals, to confirm that beyond the bruising on her arm and the torn coat, she was physically unharmed. Emotionally was another matter. Through it all, Ethan and Linda stayed close. When the police asked them to give their statements, they did so clearly and completely. Yes, they'd seen 3 men. No, they hadn't seen faces clearly enough to identify. Yes, one had a knife. No, they couldn't say which direction the men had run after leaving the garage. "You folks did a brave thing," one of the officers said. "Also a pretty stupid thing. That guy had a knife." "I know," Ethan said. "So why'd you do it?" Ethan looked over at Evelyn, who was sitting in the back of the ambulance now, wrapped in a blanket despite the mild temperature. Marcus stood guard nearby like a sentinel. "Because she needed help," Ethan said simply. The officer studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, world needs more people like you. Just try to be more careful next time." "Yeah?" When the police finally finished and the ambulance prepared to leave, Evelyn had refused transport to the hospital, but accepted the blanket and the advice to see her personal doctor. She walked over to where Ethan and Linda stood waiting. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Her voice was still shaky, but there was steel underneath now. "You put yourselves in danger. For a stranger." "You're not a stranger," Linda said gently. "You're the woman who gave us a birthday cake." Evelyn's eyes widened. "You recognized me." Not at first, Ethan admitted. But yes, that was you at the diner, wasn't it? Yes. Evelyn pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I saw you together, I saw your son give up his meal for you, and I thought that was worth celebrating. You could have just left, Ethan said, after you paid. You didn't have to leave the note. I wanted you to know you were seeing, really seeing. Evelyn's voice cracked. And tonight you saw me when I needed it most. You didn't have to help, you could have walked past. Most people would have. We're not most people, Linda said. They stood there for a moment, 3 people bound together by 2 acts of kindness in a single night. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the streets gleaming under the streetlights. Marcus approached cautiously. Mrs. Carter, we should get you home. You need to rest. Yes, you're right, but Evelyn didn't move. She looked at Ethan and Linda like she was trying to memorize their faces. May I give you a ride home? Please, after what you did, it's the least I can offer. We can take the bus, Ethan started. Please, Evelyn interrupted. Her eyes were pleading now. I need to know you got home safely. She stopped, struggling for words. I need to not be alone right now, just for a little while longer. Linda looked at Ethan and nodded slightly. Okay, Ethan said. Thank you. The car ride was quiet at first. Marcus drove carefully, checking his mirrors constantly, hyper-vigilant now after what had happened. Evelyn sat in the back seat with Linda, still wrapped in the ambulance blanket despite the car's warmth. Ethan sat across from them, watching Evelyn with concern. She was still trembling slightly, small aftershocks from the adrenaline crash. Her hand kept going to her arm, where the bruises were already forming, touching them gingerly, as if to confirm they were real. Does it hurt? Linda asked gently. Not much, just sore. Evelyn looked down at the marks. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been there. But we were, Linda said firmly. That's what matters, is it? Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. I have all this money, all this power. I have security protocols and emergency contacts and everything money can buy. And tonight none of that mattered. I was just as helpless as anyone else. Ethan leaned forward. You're not helpless. You fought back. You didn't just give them your bag. Stupid, Evelyn said bitterly. That's what the police said. Never fight over possessions. Nothing in that bag was worth my life. Maybe not to them, Linda said. But in the moment it wasn't about the bag. It was about refusing to be a victim. There's nothing stupid about that. Evelyn looked at her, and something in her expression softened. You're very kind. Both of you, even after. She stopped. After what? Ethan asked. After seeing me at my most vulnerable. Most people who know who I am never see that side. They see the CEO, the billionaire, the woman who has everything under control. She laughed, but it was hollow. Tonight showed how much of that is an illusion. Everyone's vulnerable sometimes, Linda said. Having money doesn't change that. They drove in silence for a few more minutes. Then Evelyn spoke again. I need to tell you something. About who I am. Properly, I mean. You don't owe us anything, Ethan said. Yes I do. You saved my life. The least I can do is be honest with you. Evelyn straightened up, letting the blanket fall from her shoulders. Even shaken and bruised, there was something commanding about her. My name is Evelyn Carter. I own a company called Carter Holdings. We do logistics, warehousing, real estate investment. You might have seen our building downtown. The one with the glass facade. Linda's eyes widened slightly. Carter Holdings. I've heard of it. Most people have. It's worth just over $1 billion. Evelyn said it flatly, without pride. I built it from nothing. I was 30 years old, broke, and desperate when I started. 40 years later, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Ethan studied her. That's impressive, is it? Evelyn's smile was bitter. I'm 68 years old. I spent my birthday alone today. No calls, no messages, no one to share a meal with except strangers in a diner. I watched you and your mother, and I felt something I haven't felt in years. Envy. Of us? Linda sounded incredulous. Of what you have. Connection. Love. The kind that makes a young man give up his own dinner so his mother can eat. Evelyn's voice thickened. I had a son once. Well, I still have him. Somewhere. We haven't spoken in 7 years. 7 years, Linda breathed. We had a disagreement about how I run my business, about priorities, about what matters more, profit or people. Evelyn looked out the window. He thought I chose wrong. He was probably right. The car fell silent again. Marcus navigated through the wet streets, heading toward the address Ethan had given him. Tonight, Evelyn continued, when those men grabbed me, the first thing I thought was that no one would even know I was missing until Monday morning when I didn't show up for a board meeting. That's what my life has become. I'm surrounded by people who need things from me, money, approval, signatures on documents, but no one who actually cares if I live or die. That's not true, Linda said softly. Marcus clearly cares. You should have seen his face when he realized what was happening. Marcus is paid to care. Money doesn't create that kind of fear in someone's eyes. He wasn't scared of losing his job. He was scared of losing you. Evelyn looked at Linda for a long moment. Then quietly, thank you for saying that. I'm saying it because it's true. Linda reached over and took Evelyn's hand. The gesture was so natural, so warm that Evelyn's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said, wiping at them quickly. I don't let people see. It's okay to cry. Linda said, you went through something terrifying. You're allowed to feel it. Evelyn cried quietly for a few minutes, while Linda held her hand, and Ethan looked politely away, giving her what privacy he could in the confined space. When she finally composed herself, she looked almost embarrassed. I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me. Shock, Ethan said, matter-of-factly. Adrenaline crash. Totally normal response to trauma. How do you know about trauma responses? I've had some experience with difficult situations. Ethan's expression was carefully neutral. You learn to recognize the signs. Evelyn studied him more closely. Really looked at him for the first time since the garage. She saw the worn jacket with its careful repairs, the call-used hands of someone who worked physically, the wariness in his eyes that spoke of hard-earned survival skills. What do you do? She asked. For work, I mean. Delivery driver mostly. Gig work. Whatever I can get. That's hard work. It pays the bills. Barely. Ethan shrugged. But it's honest work. The car pulled up in front of their building. Even in the dark, Evelyn could see it was a rougher neighborhood than hers. Graffiti on the walls, bars on the ground floor windows, a broken streetlight casting half the block in shadow. This is us, Ethan said, reaching for the door handle. Wait, Evelyn pulled out her phone, then stopped. My contacts were in my handbag. The one they stole. Marcus spoke up from the front seat. I have your contact information backed up, Mrs. Carter. I can send it to a new phone. Thank you, Marcus. Evelyn turned back to Ethan and Linda. I'd like to stay in touch, if that's all right. I'd like to, she struggled for words. I'd like to not lose this. Whatever this is. Linda smiled. We'd like that too. Evelyn pulled a business card from her coat pocket. Miraculously, it had survived the attack, and handed it to Ethan. This has my office number. It's the one number I actually remember. Please call me, tomorrow or whenever you'd like. I'll have a new phone by then. Ethan took the card carefully. Okay. And please, Evelyn added, her voice urgent now, if you need anything at all, medical bills from tonight, or I don't know anything. Promise you'll call. We're fine, Ethan said automatically. I know, Evelyn stopped, recognizing the pride in his voice. The same pride she'd had once, before money made pride obsolete. Just know that the offer stands. They got out of the car. Linda leaned back in to say one more thing. What you did tonight at the diner, with the cake and the note, that mattered. You gave us a beautiful moment. Don't forget that when you're being hard on yourself about other things. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. As Ethan and Linda walked toward their building, Evelyn watched them go. The young man held the door for his mother, let her lean on him as they navigated the entrance. Even from here, even in the dark, Evelyn could see the care in every gesture. Home, Mrs. Carter? Marcus asked gently. Yes, home. As they drove away, Evelyn looked down at her hands. They'd finally stopped shaking. She thought about the night, the diner, the attack, the rescue, 2 encounters with the same people, both transformative in different ways. She'd gone to that diner, looking for something she couldn't name. Solitude maybe, or anonymity. A break from being Evelyn Carter, CEO. What she'd found was something else entirely. A reminder of who she used to be. A glimpse of what she'd lost, and maybe, just maybe, a path back to something that mattered. Her phone buzzed. Marcus must have already started restoring her contacts remotely. A message from her assistant, probably wondering why she wasn't answering earlier calls. But Evelyn didn't open it. Instead, she looked out the window at Chicago sliding past, thinking about a young man who'd run toward danger without hesitation, and a mother whose first instinct had been to protect a stranger. They'd saved her life tonight, not just from the attackers, but from something else, from the loneliness that had become so constant she'd stopped noticing it, from the isolation money had built around her. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, Evelyn Carter felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in the lobby of Carter Holdings, trying not to feel out of place. Everything was glass and steel and expensive art he didn't understand. People in sharp suits moved past with purpose, their shoes clicking on marble floors. He'd worn his best shirt, the one with the coffee stain he'd finally gotten out, and khakis he'd borrowed from a co-worker. He still felt like an imposter. Mr. Miller, a young woman in a sharp blazer, approached, Asian, maybe 30, with an efficient smile that put him slightly at ease. "I'm Sarah Chen, Miss Carter's assistant. She's ready for you." The elevator ride to the 55th floor made his ears pop. Sarah made polite conversation about the weather, the city, anything to fill the silence. Ethan barely heard her. His mind was racing through everything that could go wrong. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that screamed wealth and power. Through glass walls, Ethan could see office workers at their desks. At the end of the hall, a set of double doors stood open. Evelyn's office was overwhelming. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Chicago, the lake stretching blue and endless in the distance. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive. Everything was designed to intimidate, and it worked. Evelyn stood at the window, silhouetted against the city. She turned when he entered. Today she looked every inch the CEO: tailored suit, hair perfect, commanding presence. "Ethan, thank you for coming." She gestured to a chair. "Please sit." He sat. She took the chair across from him, not the power position behind her desk. It was a small gesture, but he noticed it. "How's your mother?" "She's good. Physical therapy is helping with her knee." "I'm glad." Evelyn folded her hands. "I imagine you have questions, about 1,000. Ask. Why me? Really, not the speech about sacrifice and understanding. The real reason." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "Because when I met with the other candidates, they all told me what I wanted to hear. They talked about efficiency and metrics and return on investment. You told me to face the people I'd hurt. You didn't care about impressing me. You cared about doing it right. That's not a qualification, it's the only qualification that matters." She pulled out a folder. "I've had my lawyers draft a proposal. The community care program will be restructured as an independent nonprofit organization. Carter Holdings will fund it through an endowment, but operational control will rest with a separate board. You'll serve as executive director." Ethan opened the folder. The numbers made his head spin. An annual budget of $12 million, salary of $65,000 for him, full medical benefits for him and his mother, housing assistance. This is too much. It's market rate for the position. For someone with experience. I'm nobody. You're someone who cares. That's worth more than experience. Evelyn leaned forward. "I've spent 30 years building a company. I know how to read people. You have something that can't be taught. Integrity, empathy, the ability to see past the bureaucracy to the human beings at the center of it. What if I fail? Then we'll figure it out together. But I don't think you will." Ethan looked at the numbers again. $65,000 a year. He'd made $23,000 last year. This would change everything. His mother could get the treatment she needed. They could move somewhere safe. He could stop worrying about every dollar. "There's something else," Evelyn said. She pulled out another document. "Carter Holdings maintains several residential properties for employee housing. We have a 2-bedroom unit available in Lakeview, near a hospital. Good schools, if you ever." She stopped. "It's yours if you want it. Subsidized rent, $600 a month. $600 a month." Their current apartment was $800 for a 4th-floor walk-up with a broken elevator and sirens every night. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan asked quietly. "Because I owe you. Because I want to do better." Because maybe if I help enough people I can start to forgive myself for the ones I hurt. Evelyn's voice was raw. And because I think you're going to be extraordinary at this. Don't prove me wrong. Ethan stared at the papers in his hands. Life-changing didn't begin to cover it. Terrifying came closer. If I say yes, he said slowly, I do it my way. I don't want to be a puppet. I don't want board members second-guessing every decision. You won't be. The board will be made up of community representatives, not business executives. You'll have final say on all operational decisions. And if I see something wrong with how Carter Holdings operates, if I find out you're still making decisions that hurt people, then you tell me, loudly, publicly if necessary. Evelyn's gaze was steady. I'm not asking you to protect my reputation. I'm asking you to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Ethan thought about Helen Brooks, about the 617 files, about his mother working herself sick for 20 years to keep him fed, about the $48 that had felt like the end of the world just a month ago. Okay, he said. I'll do it. Evelyn's smile transformed her face. For a moment she looked younger, lighter. Thank you. You start Monday. Sarah will handle all the paperwork and get you set up. There's still the public meeting. You promised. It's scheduled for next Friday. The community center on South Ashland. Everyone affected has been contacted. It won't be pleasant. Good. It shouldn't be. As Ethan stood to leave, Evelyn called out, one more thing. He turned. I'm grateful for this chance to make things right. For you being brave enough to hold me accountable. For her voice caught. For reminding me what it means to be human. Ethan nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. In the elevator going down, Sarah handed him a tablet. This has all the information you'll need. Building access codes, contact lists, current program data. Take the weekend to review it. Monday we'll start orientation. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you still working here? For her. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen her change. Really change. The person who cut those programs 3 years ago. She's not the same person standing in that office now. People can grow. They can learn. I want to be here to see where that growth leads. What if she backslides? Then I'll be the first one out the door. But I don't think she will. Not with you watching. When Ethan got home, his mother was cooking dinner. The apartment smelled like onions and garlic, the kind of smell that meant home. How did it go? She asked. Ethan set the folder on the table. I took the job. Linda turned from the stove. Really, I start Monday. And Mom? He pulled out the lease agreement. We're moving. That weekend passed in a blur. They gave notice on their apartment, packed their modest belongings into boxes. Ethan reviewed the tablets Sarah had given him until his eyes burned, trying to absorb years of program history and budget data. Monday morning he put on the one decent outfit he owned and took 3 buses downtown. Sarah met him in the lobby with coffee and a schedule that made his head spin. Welcome to your first day, she said with a smile. Ready? No. Good. That means you're paying attention. She led him through a maze of hallways to a small office on the 32nd floor. It had a window, an actual window, and a desk and a computer. And everything he needed to do work he had no idea how to do. Your first priority is reviewing the terminated case files, Sarah said. We need to contact everyone and offer to restore their benefits. I've set up a database for tracking. The outreach team will handle the actual calls, but you'll need to approve the messaging. Outreach team, 3 people. They're expecting you at 10 for a meeting. The day was a whirlwind of meetings and introductions and information overload. Everyone was polite, professional, but Ethan could see the curiosity in their eyes. Who was this kid? Why had Miss Carter hired him? By 5 p.m. his head was pounding. Sarah appeared in his doorway with takeout. You need to eat, and then we need to prep you for Friday. The public meeting. Yes, it's going to be intense. Angry. People are going to say things that hurt. You need to be prepared. How do you prepare for that? You remember why you're doing this. You remember that their anger is justified, and you remember that the only way forward is through. That night, Ethan stayed late reviewing the files. 617 names. 617 lives interrupted. He read every case, every note, every outcome. Some people had recovered, some hadn't. Some were dead. He made a list of everyone he wanted to meet before the public forum. At the top, Helen Brooks. The next morning he called her. Miss Brooks, this is Ethan Miller. I came to visit you a few weeks ago. I remember I took the job. I'm running the community care program now, and I need your help. With what? Making sure we do this right. I'm going to visit everyone I can before the public meeting Friday. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it for the world. Good, because I need people like you there. People who'll tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Helen was quiet for a moment. You really mean this, don't you? This isn't some PR stunt. I really mean it, and I need people watching to make sure it stays that way. All right, I'll be there. Front row. Over the next 3 days, Ethan visited as many people from the files as he could. Dorothy Williams, who'd nearly starved. Robert Chen, who'd lost his housing. Maria Santos, whose medication had been cut mid-treatment. Each story was worse than the last. Each person had been failed by a system that was supposed to help them. And each person asked the same question: why should we believe this time will be different? Ethan didn't have a good answer. All he could offer was his promise to try, and his commitment to transparency. Some people accepted that. Some didn't. He didn't blame them. Friday came too fast. Ethan stood backstage at the community center, listening to the crowd gather. 200 people. Sarah had done the outreach perfectly. You ready? Evelyn appeared beside him. She looked scared, which somehow made Ethan feel better. No, you. Terrified. But that's appropriate. She straightened her shoulders. Thank you for making me do this. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be brutal. I know I deserve brutal. The lights dimmed. Sarah gave them the signal. Together they walked onto the stage. The community center fell silent as Ethan and Evelyn stepped into the light. 200 faces stared up at them. Some curious, some angry, some just exhausted from fighting systems that never listened. Ethan spotted Helen Brooks in the front row, her walker beside her chair. She nodded at him once, sharp and decisive. It steadied something in his chest. Evelyn stepped up to the microphone. Her hands gripped the podium like it might keep her upright. Thank you for coming, she began. Her voice echoed in the sudden quiet. I know many of you took time. You couldn't afford to be here. I know some of you are angry. You have every right to be. A man in the third row stood up before she could continue. He was maybe 65, thin, with angry eyes. We didn't come here for apologies. We came here for answers. Why did you cut us off? Evelyn didn't flinch. 3 years ago, Carter Holdings faced a financial crisis. The board presented me with options. I could lay off 5,000 employees, or I could restructure community programs. I chose to cut the programs. The room erupted, people shouting, demanding to be heard. Ethan stood beside Evelyn, his presence a silent support, but he let her face it alone. She'd asked for this. She needed to feel it. After several minutes, a woman raised her hand. The room quieted. My name is Dorothy Williams, she said. Her voice was weak but clear. You cut my meal delivery service. I have diabetes. I can't cook for myself anymore. I ended up in the hospital for malnutrition. She stood slowly, leaning on the chair in front of her. Do you know what that feels like? Starving in your own home because you're too proud to beg. Evelyn's face went pale. No, I don't. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't feed me. You're right, it doesn't. Evelyn looked directly at Dorothy. That's why I'm here. Not to ask for forgiveness, because I don't deserve it, but to tell you what I'm going to do to make this right. She nodded to Ethan, who pulled up a presentation on the screen behind them. Effective immediately, Carter Holdings is reinstating the community care initiative at full capacity. Evelyn said, we're reaching out to every person whose assistance was terminated. If you were affected, you will be contacted within 72 hours. Full restoration of services, no questions asked, no reapplication needed. Another voice from the crowd. For how long? Until the next time you need to balance your books. That's a fair question. Evelyn turned to face the room. Which is why I'm also announcing that the Community Care Initiative is being transferred to an independent non-profit organization. It will be fully funded by Carter Holdings through an endowment that cannot be touched by the company or its board. I will have no operational control, no voting rights, no ability to make the same mistake twice. Murmurs rippled through the audience, some skeptical, some cautiously hopeful. Who's going to run it? Someone called out. Evelyn gestured to Ethan. Ethan Miller will serve as executive director. He'll have full authority to hire staff, set policy and allocate resources. He'll be accountable to a board made up of community representatives, not business executives. The murmurs grew louder. People were talking to each other, processing. Ethan saw the calculation happening in real time. Could they trust this? Was it real? Helen Brooks stood slowly. The room fell silent. "I have a question for you, Miss Carter," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Why now? Why not 3 years ago when we were sending you letters? When we were calling and getting no answer?" Evelyn's hands tightened on the podium. "Because 3 years ago I cared more about my company's reputation than about the people I was hurting. Because I was a coward who hid behind spreadsheets and budget reports instead of facing the consequences of my decisions. Because it took someone," she looked at Ethan, "reminding me what actually matters." "And what's that?" Helen's voice was like steel. "That every person in this room is someone's mother, someone's father, someone's reason for getting up in the morning. Someone who deserves dignity and care, not because they're profitable, but because they're human." Evelyn's voice broke. "I forgot that. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's the truth." Helen stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded once and sat down. But others weren't satisfied. A man in the back stood. "You talk about dignity, but you took ours. You made us beg. You made us feel worthless. And now you want us to believe you've changed, just like that." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "I don't expect you to believe anything just like that. I expect you to watch, to question, to hold us accountable. That's why we're setting up a community oversight board. 5 members, elected by the people we serve. They'll have full access to our finances, our decisions, everything. If we screw up, they can shut us down. And you'll accept that," someone challenged. "You'll give up control." "Yes, because I've learned that control is what got us into this mess." Evelyn stepped back from the podium. "I can't undo the past 3 years. I can't bring back the people who died because of decisions I made. But I can make sure it never happens again. That's what I'm offering. Not trust, not forgiveness, just a chance to watch us try to do better." Ethan stepped forward. "I'm going to be honest with you. A month ago I was a delivery driver making $23,000 a year. I don't have a business degree. I don't have experience running anything except my own life. Barely. But I do understand what it's like to ration medication because you can't afford more. To skip meals so someone you love can eat. To be invisible to systems that are supposed to help you." He looked out at the crowd. "I can't promise I'll get everything right. But I can promise I'll listen. I can promise that when you call, someone will answer. I can promise that you'll never again be just a number on a spreadsheet. You'll be people, and you'll be treated like people deserve to be treated." A woman in her 70s stood up. "You say all that now, but what happens when it gets hard? When the money runs out, when it's inconvenient? Then I'll fight," Ethan said simply. "I'll fight like I'd fight for my own mother. Because that's what this is. It's fighting for people who deserve someone in their corner." The questions continued for another hour. Some hostile, some curious, some just exhausted from fighting for so long. Ethan and Evelyn answered every one. Never making excuses, never deflecting blame, just facing the anger and pain they'd caused. When it was finally over, people filed out slowly. Some stopped to shake Ethan's hand. A few even nodded at Evelyn, though their expressions remained guarded. No one offered forgiveness. Ethan hadn't expected they would. Helen was the last to leave. She approached the stage where Evelyn stood, gathering her notes with shaking hands. "Miss Carter." Evelyn looked up. "Yes. I don't forgive you, not yet, maybe not ever, I understand. But I'll accept your help, and I'll be watching. Every day, every decision. If you mess up I'll know, and I'll make sure everyone else knows too. I wouldn't want it any other way." Helen studied her for a moment. Then she turned to Ethan. "You better be as good as you sound, young man." "I'll try." "Don't try. Do." She tapped her walker on the floor for emphasis. "We've had enough people trying. We need people doing." When Helen left, Ethan and Evelyn stood alone in the empty community center. Chairs scattered. Pamphlets littering the floor. Evidence of 200 lives that had intersected with theirs, however briefly. "That was brutal," Ethan said. "I needed brutal." Evelyn sat down heavily in the front row. "How bad is the fallout going to be? From the meeting? Or from the board?" "Both. The meeting went better than I expected. Some people are willing to give us a chance. As for the board, Ethan pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from Sarah. 7 from various executives. I think you're about to find out. Evelyn's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and closed her eyes. Emergency board meeting. Tonight, 8 p.m. What will you tell them? The truth, that I'm done making decisions based on stock price, that I'm done sacrificing people for profit, and if they don't like it they can find a new seat. They might actually do that. I know. She looked at him. Is it worth it? Losing everything I've built for something that might fail? You tell me, what have you actually built? A company, a fortune, or a life that means something? Evelyn was quiet for a long time. Then she stood. Come on, you should be at this board meeting too. Why? Because you're going to run the foundation. They need to see who you are, what you stand for, and they need to understand that I'm not backing down. The board meeting was held in a conference room on the 55th floor of Carter Holdings. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around a table made of wood that probably cost more than Ethan's entire apartment. They looked at him like he was a stain on their furniture. Evelyn sat at the head of the table. Ethan sat beside her, trying not to fidget. Let's get to it, said a man in his 60s with silver hair and a cold expression. Evelyn, what the hell are you doing? This community initiative nonsense is tanking our stock price. Shareholders are furious. We've had 3 institutional investors threaten to pull out. Then let them pull out, Evelyn said calmly. Excuse me, if they're only invested because we maximize profit at the expense of human dignity, then I don't want their money. The room exploded, everyone talking at once, shouting about fiduciary responsibility, about shareholder value, about the company they'd built together. Evelyn let them yell. When they finally ran out of steam, she spoke. I made a choice 3 years ago that I've regretted every day since. I cut programs that helped vulnerable people because this board told me to. Because you said it was necessary. Because profit mattered more than people. She looked around the table. I'm not making that choice again. You don't have a choice, another board member said. A woman with sharp eyes and sharper words. We have a legal obligation to our shareholders. You can't just give away millions because you feel guilty. I'm not giving it away. I'm investing it in people, in community, in the kind of company I wish we'd been all along. That's not how business works. Then maybe business needs to work differently. The silver-haired man leaned forward. Evelyn, be reasonable. We understand you want to do some good. That's admirable. But this, he gestured at Ethan. This is not how you run a billion-dollar company. This boy has no experience, no credentials. You're making us a laughingstock. This man, Ethan said quietly, and every head turned, has more experience than any of you in what really matters. I've lived the life of the people we're supposed to be helping. I know what it's like to be failed by systems that don't care. And I know what help actually looks like when you need it. That doesn't qualify you to run a multi-million-dollar program. No, but my willingness to listen does. My commitment to treating people like human beings does. My refusal to hide behind profit margins when real lives are at stake does. Ethan stood. Miss Carter hired me because she knows I won't let her make the same mistakes twice. If that makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. The room fell silent. The board members exchanged glances. This is corporate suicide, someone muttered. Maybe, Evelyn said. Or maybe it's the first honest thing this company has done in years. She stood beside Ethan. I'm restructuring the community initiative as an independent foundation. It will be funded by Carter Holdings, but operationally autonomous. The board can't touch it. You can't cut it when it's convenient. It's done. You can't do that without board approval. Actually, I can. My controlling shares give me final say. I'm doing this with or without your blessing. The silver-haired man's face went red. This is unconscionable. You're violating your fiduciary duty. Shareholders will sue. Let them. I'll show them exactly what their profit margins cost. Evelyn pulled out a folder and dropped it on the table. 617 people. That's how many lost their benefits 3 years ago. Some of them died, others suffered. All because we decided money mattered more. If shareholders want to sue over that, I'll see them in court. The meeting devolved into chaos. Threats of resignation, threats of lawsuits,
threats to call an emergency shareholder vote to remove Evelyn as CEO. Through it all she remained calm. When they finally ran out of threats she spoke once more. I understand if you want to leave. I understand if you think I've lost my mind. But I'm not changing course. This is who I am now. This is who I should have been all along. And if that costs me this company, then so be it. She walked out. Ethan followed. In the elevator they stood in silence. When the doors opened on the lobby, Evelyn let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. Well, that went about as expected. They're going to fight you, Ethan said. I know, but I've spent 30 years fighting for profit. It's time I fought for something that actually matters. Over the next 2 weeks the fallout was worse than they'd imagined. 3 board members resigned. The stock price dropped 12%. Business publications ran headlines about Carter's PR disaster and controversial pivot. Shareholders filed complaints. Lawyers sent letters. Through it all Ethan worked. He hired staff for the foundation. He approved outreach plans. He personally called every single person on the list of terminated cases. Some hung up on him. Some cried. Some were already dead and he spoke to their families instead, offering restored benefits too late to matter, but hoping the gesture meant something anyway. Helen Brooks became his unofficial advisor. She came to the office twice a week, reviewing his decisions, challenging his assumptions, making sure he stayed grounded in reality. You're doing good work, she told him one afternoon. Don't let the suits get to you. They're trying to force Evelyn out.
Let them try. She's tougher than she looks. Helen leaned on her walker. Besides, she's got something now that money can't buy. What's that? Purpose. People can live without money. They can't live without a reason to keep going. 3 weeks after the public meeting, Evelyn called Ethan into her office. I'm stepping down as CEO, she said without preamble. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? Not leaving the company, just the CEO role. I'll stay on the board as a non-voting member. Patricia Hayes is taking over as CEO. She's been with the company 20 years, worked her way up from operations. She's tough and fair and she won't make the mistakes I made. Why? Because I need to rebuild trust. With my son, with the community, with myself. And I can't do that while fighting board battles and managing a billion-dollar company. Evelyn smiled. It looked lighter than any expression Ethan had seen on her face. Besides, I have a new job. What? The foundation needs a full-time fundraiser. Someone who knows how to ask rich people for money. I figure that's something I'm qualified for. Ethan stared at her. You're going to fundraise, for the foundation. Why not? You need money. I know where to find it. And maybe her voice softened. Maybe this is how I earn back what I lost. Not through grand gestures, but through the daily work of actually helping people. What about your fortune? Your power? I'll still have enough money to be comfortable. As for power, she shrugged. I'm tired of power. I want to be useful instead. That night, Ethan told his mother about Evelyn's decision. They were in their new apartment in Lakeview, 2 bedrooms, working heat, windows that locked, unpacking the last of their boxes. She's giving up everything, Linda said. Not everything, just the things that don't matter. Do you believe that? That money and power don't matter? Ethan thought about it. I think they matter less than we're taught to believe. And I think sometimes losing them is the only way to find what actually does matter. Linda smiled and continued unpacking. They worked in comfortable silence, building a new life from the pieces of the old. 6 months later, the Carter Community Care Foundation occupied the 5th floor of a building in Pilsen. The space wasn't fancy, functional desks, decent computers, walls painted a cheerful yellow that Linda had insisted on, but it felt like hope. 17 staff members worked full-time coordinating care for over 1,000 people across Chicago. Ethan sat in his office, still strange to think of it as his office, reviewing the quarterly report. They'd successfully contacted all 617 terminated cases. 502 had accepted restored services. The others had either moved, passed away, or simply wanted nothing to do with Carter money anymore. He didn't blame them. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Board meeting survived. Patricia is cleaning house. 3 more executives out. The ones who couldn't adapt to the new direction. Ethan smiled. The new CEO had turned out to be exactly what Carter Holdings needed. Someone who understood that sustainable business meant caring about more than just quarterly profits. How's the fundraiser going? He texted back. Secured $2.3 million from the Goldman Foundation. They want to expand to Milwaukee. Can we handle that? Ethan thought about their staffing, their systems, their capacity. Give us 6 months to stabilize Chicago first. Then yes. His mother appeared in the doorway carrying a cardboard box. Brought you lunch. Mom? You don't have to. Chicken soup. You barely ate breakfast. She set the container on his desk with the authority only mothers possess. Eat. Linda volunteered 3 days a week now, helping organize birthday celebrations for elderly clients. She'd turned it into her personal mission. Last month they'd thrown parties for 16 people who would have spent their birthdays alone. How's the Rodriguez family? Ethan asked between bites. Mr. Rodriguez got approved for the medical equipment. Mrs. Rodriguez cried when we delivered it. Linda sat down across from him. You know what she said? She said this is the first time anyone's helped them without making them feel small. That's the whole point. I know. I'm just saying you should be proud. They were interrupted by Sarah Chen appearing in the doorway. She'd left Carter Holdings 3 months ago to become the foundation's COO. We've got visitors. Helen Brooks is here with someone she wants you to meet. Ethan stood immediately. Helen had become a fixture at the foundation, serving on the community oversight board and keeping everyone honest with her sharp questions and sharper instincts. She entered his office slowly, her walker clicking against the floor, but she looked stronger than the first time they'd met. Better color in her face, steadier on her feet. Beside her stood a young woman, early 20s, with Helen's sharp eyes and determined expression. Mr. Miller, Helen said. This is my granddaughter Jasmine. She's finishing nursing school. She needs a part-time job. Nice to meet you, Jasmine said, shaking Ethan's hand firmly. My grandmother won't stop talking about this place. I wanted to see it for myself. They talked for 20 minutes. Jasmine was smart, passionate, and understood the community they served. When Ethan offered her a position coordinating medical appointments, she accepted immediately. After they left, Ethan sat back in his chair and marveled at the strange path that had brought him here. From $48 and a desperate prayer to running a foundation that actually helped people. From being invisible to being someone people looked to for answers. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Is this Ethan Miller? Yes. This is James Carter. I'm Evelyn's son. Ethan sat up straight. Yes. She's mentioned you. I'm sure she has. A pause. Look. I'm calling because I wanted to thank you. For what? For seeing something in her that I'd given up looking for. For giving her a chance to be the person she wanted to be. His voice caught. For giving me my mother back. Ethan didn't know what to say. I didn't do anything special. Yes, you did. You held her accountable. You didn't let her hide behind money or power or guilt. You made her face what she'd done, and then you gave her a way to make it right. James was quiet for a moment. We're having dinner next week. The 3 of us, her, me and my daughter, first time in 7 years. That's because of you. That's because of her. She did the hard work. Maybe. But you made her believe she could. Another pause. Anyway, I wanted you to know, what you're doing matters. To more people than you realize. After he hung up, Ethan sat in his office and let himself feel the weight of it. The responsibility, the trust, the lives that depended on him getting this right. His mother appeared in the doorway again. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how strange life is. 6 months ago I had $48 and no idea how we'd make it through the week. Now I'm running a foundation that helps 1,000 people. Linda came around the desk and hugged him. Your father would be so proud. Ethan held his mother close, thinking about the man who'd taught him to hold doors, to work hard, to put others first. He hoped she was right. He hoped wherever his father was, he could see that the lessons had stuck. That evening, Ethan, Linda, and Evelyn met for dinner at a small Italian restaurant in their neighborhood. It had become a weekly tradition, this gathering of their unlikely family. Evelyn looked lighter than Ethan had ever seen her. James called me today. He wants to bring my granddaughter to meet me next week. Evelyn, that's wonderful. Linda reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Her name is Sophie. She's 5. I've never met her. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. I missed 5 years of her life, because I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. You're not missing any more, Ethan said. No, I'm not. She wiped her eyes. Thank you, both of you, for giving me the courage to change. We didn't give you anything, Linda said. We just saw who you really were underneath all the armor. They talked late into the evening, sharing stories and laughter and the comfortable silences that come with real friendship. When they finally left, Evelyn hugged them both at the door. See you Sunday, she asked. Pot roast, Linda confirmed. Don't be late. Walking home, Ethan and Linda moved slowly, enjoying the mild evening. Their new neighborhood was quieter than the old one, safer, but Ethan sometimes missed the chaos, the sense that he was connected to something real and raw. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked his mother. What do you mean? Accepting Evelyn's help, taking this job, all of it. Sometimes I wonder if we just took the easy way out. Linda stopped walking and turned to face him. Ethan Miller, you listen to me. You didn't take the easy way out. You took a chance to help people who needed it. And you've done it with integrity and compassion, and more grace than most people could manage. She put her hands on his shoulders. You've changed lives, hundreds of them. That's not the easy way. That's the right way. What if I mess up? Then you'll fix it. That's what good people do. They mess up, they fix it, they keep going. When they got home, Ethan stood at his window looking out at Chicago stretching dark and bright before him. Millions of people, each carrying their own struggles, their own hopes, their own last $48. He couldn't help them all, but he could help some, and maybe that was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Helen Brooks. Stop overthinking. You're doing fine. See you Tuesday. He smiled. Somehow she always knew. That night, before bed, Ethan pulled out the folder he kept in his desk drawer. It held copies of all 617 terminated case files. He'd kept them as a reminder, not of failure but of why the work mattered. Each name represented a person who'd been invisible until someone decided to see them. He added a new section to the folder. Letters from people they'd helped. Thank you notes. Photos from birthday parties. Stories of lives changed not through grand gestures but through the daily work of showing up and caring. This was what mattered. Not the money, not the office, not the title. This connection. Purpose. The knowledge that someone out there was sleeping easier because you'd chosen to care. Ethan turned off the light and looked out at the city one more time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more people to help, more problems to solve, more chances to mess up and fix it, and keep going. But tonight he let himself feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. 1 year after that rainy birthday dinner, Linda Miller celebrated her 53rd birthday surrounded by 17 elderly clients of the foundation, all of whom insisted on bringing cake. The foundation's office had been transformed into a party space, balloons and streamers everywhere, music playing from a speaker someone's grandson had brought. This is too much, Linda kept saying, but she was smiling so wide her face hurt. Nonsense, Helen Brooks said, cutting another slice of cake. You've given us so many birthdays, it's time we gave you one. Ethan watched from the doorway, his heart full. His mother had found her purpose here, bringing joy to people who'd spent too long being forgotten. Every week she coordinated parties, called to check in, sent cards on holidays. She'd become the heart of the foundation, the person everyone called when they needed someone to care. Evelyn appeared beside him, carrying a gift wrapped in silver paper. Should I give this to her now, or wait? What is it? Open it and see. They gathered everyone around as Linda unwrapped the gift. Inside was a plaque that read Linda Miller, Director of Community Engagement, Carter Community Care Foundation. Linda looked up confused. What is this? It's your new title, Ethan said. We're making it official. Salary, benefits, everything. You've been doing the job anyway. Now we're just paying you for it. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I don't need. Yes you do, Evelyn said firmly. You work 3 days a week, sometimes 4. You coordinate programs, manage volunteers, bring joy to hundreds of people. That's worth compensation. That's worth recognition. Besides, Helen added, someone needs to keep Ethan honest. Might as well be his mother. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Linda hugged Ethan fiercely, then Evelyn, then everyone else in reach. Later, as the party wound down and people started heading home, Ethan helped clean up. Sarah was boxing leftover cake, Helen was organizing donated gifts, and his mother was saying goodbye to each person individually, making sure they all had rides home. Evelyn pulled him aside. I need to show you something.
They went to his office. She pulled up a news article on his computer. Carter Holdings stock rebounds, after year of community focus. New CEO Patricia Hayes credits return to core values for renewed investor confidence. They're doing better, Evelyn said. Better than before. Turns out treating people well is good for business. Who knew? Are you surprised? A little. A year ago I thought I'd have to choose between doing good and doing well. Turns out you can do both if you're willing to prioritize differently. Ethan read through the article. Carter Holdings had restructured completely. They divested from several questionable ventures, and doubled down on ethical supply chains and community investment. The stock price had dipped initially, but had recovered and then some. Investors were calling it conscious capitalism done right. Patricia wants to create similar foundations in 5 other cities, Evelyn continued. She's asked me to head up the expansion. Are you going to do it? I think so. It means traveling, meeting with community leaders, convincing other wealthy people to invest in humanity instead of just profit margins. She smiled. Turns out I'm good at that. When do you start? Next month. But I'll be back every few weeks, and I'll still be at Sunday dinners. Your mother would kill me if I missed pot roast. They laughed and Ethan felt grateful for the strange family they'd built. Not related by blood, but connected by something stronger. Choice. Commitment. The decision to see each other as fully human. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Miller, this is Sophie Carter. My grandma says you're the one who helped her become a better person. I wanted to say thank you. She's the best grandma ever now. Ethan showed the text to Evelyn. She read it and started crying. Her first text to me, she whispered. James gave her my number. She's been texting me jokes all week. Terrible jokes, the kind only a 5-year-old thinks are funny. That's beautiful. It's everything. Evelyn wiped her eyes. A year ago I had all the money in the world, and nothing that mattered. Now I have less money, and everything I never knew I needed. That night, the 3 of them, Ethan, Linda and Evelyn, went to Harbor Street Diner. The same booth where it had all started. The same menu, the same tired but kind server who remembered them. Back again? She asked with a smile. Celebrating, Linda said. It's my birthday week. Well, happy birthday. What can I get you? This time they all ordered real meals. Steaks and sides and dessert. Not because they had to prove anything, but because they could. Because they'd earned the right to celebrate without guilt. When the check came, Ethan pulled out his wallet. But Evelyn was faster. My turn, she said. You paid last time, and I'll pay this time too. Let me, please. They let her because generosity, they'd learned, wasn't about giving from a place of power. It was about sharing from a place of love. As they left, the server called out, You folks have a good night. And ma'am, she looked at Linda. Happy birthday. Hope it's everything you wished for. Walking to the car, Linda linked arms with both Ethan and Evelyn. You know what I wished for last year, on that cake you bought us? What? Evelyn asked. I wished that things would get better for Ethan, that he'd find something that made him happy, that he'd know he was valued. She squeezed their arms. I got my wish. We all did, Evelyn said quietly. Later Ethan dropped Evelyn off at her condo, smaller now, after she'd downsized but filled with photos of Sophie and James and the life she was rebuilding. Then he drove home with his mother, through streets that felt safer now, through a city that felt more like home. Are you happy? Linda asked as they pulled into their building's parking lot. Ethan thought about it. About the work that never stopped, the problems that kept coming, the responsibility that sometimes felt crushing. About Helen Brooks's sharp questions and Sarah's endless efficiency and his mother's quiet strength. About Evelyn's redemption and James's forgiveness and Sophie's terrible jokes. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Good, because I'm proud of you. So proud. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, still only the 4th floor, but in a building where the elevator actually worked now. Inside everything was warm and safe and theirs. Ethan stood at his window one last time, looking out at Chicago, the same city where he'd once counted $48 and wondered how he'd survive. The same city where a stranger had seen him and decided he mattered. That stranger had become family. That $48 had become purpose. That desperate prayer for one good thing had become a foundation that helped thousands. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was still work to do, people to help, problems to solve. Helen Brooks still called him every week to challenge his decisions. The board still questioned his choices. Money was still tight, resources still limited, needs still endless, but it was real, it was honest, it was earned, and that, Ethan thought as he finally turned away from the window, was better than any fantasy. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Evelyn. James wants us all to come to Sophie's birthday party next month. She specifically requested Ethan and Miss Linda. She says we're family now. Ethan smiled and texted back, "We'd love to. We are family," because that was the truth they'd all learned. Family wasn't just blood. It was the people who saw you when you needed to be seen, who held you accountable when you needed it, who celebrated your victories and mourned your failures and showed up again and again because they chose to care. Ethan had started with $48 and a prayer. He'd ended with a family, a purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple outward in ways you can't predict. All it took was someone willing to see, someone willing to act, someone willing to believe that all people deserve dignity and care and the occasional birthday cake. He turned off the lights and went to bed, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring, because tomorrow would bring more people who needed help, more problems to solve, more chances to show up and care and prove that humanity mattered more than profit. And he'd be there. They all would, together. The Carter Community Care Foundation continues its work throughout Chicago and has expanded to 6 additional cities. To date, it has served over 8,000 individuals and families, providing medical care, housing assistance, meal programs, and birthday parties for those who might otherwise celebrate alone. Evelyn Carter and her son James now speak regularly. She sees her granddaughter Sophie twice a month and has attended every school play, soccer game, and birthday party since their reconciliation. Sophie calls her Grandma Eve and sends her terrible jokes daily. Linda Miller celebrated her 53rd birthday surrounded by 17 elderly clients who insisted she was the best thing that ever happened to them. She continues to coordinate community celebrations and has become known as everyone's favorite person. Her arthritis is managed well now with medication she can afford and physical therapy covered by her employment benefits. Helen Brooks serves on the foundation's Community Oversight Board and has never missed a meeting. She is 80 years old now, sharp as ever, and takes great joy in keeping everyone honest. Her granddaughter Jasmine works full-time at the foundation and is pursuing a master's degree in public health. And Ethan Miller still remembers the rainy night when $48 felt like the weight of the world. He keeps that memory close, a reminder that kindness isn't about grand gestures or unlimited resources. It's about seeing people really seeing them and choosing to care. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.